Is my dog comfortable? Is my dog in pain? Is my dog having a good quality of life? If your dog normally greets you at the door and is excited when you get home, that's abnormal. Hi guys, I'm Dr. Alicia, and today we're talking about all the ways that your dog is subtly telling you that they're in pain because they can't talk. Growing up, I had a childhood Labrador Retriever. He was the love of my life. He was my best friend. I got him when I was 10. He eventually passed when I was 25. So I had this boy for 15 years, and it was the best 15 years ever with him. When he was really old, my dad had taken care of him while I was in school and moving around. And I remember not having seen him for about a year, and I came home and he looked horrible. He had a distended abdomen, he could barely walk, he would defecate, and then because he couldn't balance himself and stand, he would fall back into it. And it just was no standard of life that I think a dog should live in. And I remember talking to my dad and telling him, Dad, Alika needs to be humanely euthanized. Like, it is his time. And my dad was like, well, he's not in pain. And I was like, what do you mean he's not in pain? He can't stand, he can't balance. His abdomen is filled with fluid. He is arthritic. And my dad said to me, well, he's not whimpering, so he's not in pain. And that was a really, really hard conversation for us because at this point, I'd been in veterinary school for a couple of years. I somewhat knew what I was talking about, and trying to explain to my dad that just because a dog isn't whimpering doesn't mean that they are comfortable. Alika, my dog, was actually showing us so many different ways that he was in pain, but because we often, can't communicate with our dogs, it can be really hard for normal people to see those signs and then step in and intervene. Oftentimes in people's minds, a dog will whimper if it's in pain. If it's not whimpering, it must be comfortable. But that's so far from the truth. So this video is to help anyone who is looking at your dog and wondering, is my dog comfortable? Is my dog in pain? Is my dog having a good quality of life? So firstly, dogs are so stoic and so good at hiding their pain. In the wild, if you show pain, that's a weakness. You're gonna be targeted by predators, you're gonna get eaten, you're gonna die. So if you're painful in the wild, you hide it. And so that means if a dog, because they have natural instincts, if a dog is in pain, oftentimes they are stoic about it. Oftentimes they don't outwardly show you that they're in pain. They don't whimper, they don't cry, because they're trying to put on a brave front because it's their natural instincts. But there are so many subtle signs that you can look out for. And the biggest overarching thing for you to know is that it is so important to be familiar with your dog's habits. So this means be familiar with your dog's personality. Be familiar with your dog's urinary and bowel movement habits. Be familiar with how excited your dog is to eat on a day-to-day basis versus, are they kind of just apathetic towards food and just nibble it throughout the day and that's their normal? Get to know your dog's normals. This is so important because the biggest thing that I can tell you guys is any deviation from normal means something isn't right. If your dog normally scarfs down their food, but the past couple days, they kind of just graze throughout the day and don't get super excited about their food, but they're still eating, that's still a red flag because it's a deviation from your dog's normal. If your cat normally urinates in the litter box, but all of a sudden is urinating outside of the litter box, that's a deviation from normal that needs addressed. I know we're just talking about dogs, but it applies to all animals. Now, aside from deviations from normals, we can get into some more specifics. So looking at musculoskeletal system. So your dog's bones, your dog's, we'll even include like soft tissue, muscle in there, tendons, all of that stuff. If your dog is painful, they can present that in many different ways. Most of the time, this is gonna show up as limping. So you'll notice that if it's really severe, they won't put any weight on the foot that really hurts. Now, they might not whimper, they might not cry out, but most likely they won't put any weight on it. So if you notice that, clearly something about that leg or that paw is bothering them. But dogs don't always respond that severely. Sometimes their limp is really subtle. And so taking a video or bringing your dog into the vet so your vet can assess it is gonna be really important because how they place weight on each foot and, are they trying to offload that pain onto the other side? All of that information is really good to pinpointing the pain. Now, if you can't appreciate that your dog is limping, maybe you notice something like it's really hard for them to go from a laying down position to a standing up position. If it looks like it's labored, they're taking a lot of effort to do this. Or if you notice that they're having difficulty climbing the stairs or jumping up onto things, again, those are all signs that your dog is in pain and most likely has some sort of arthritic pain or bony pain. Aside from musculoskeletal, they can show you symptoms of pain in other ways. If we're looking at the GI tract, they might stop eating, eat in a different way than before, like not as ravenous. They might have vomiting, diarrhea. They might be bloated. They might have, if you look at their belly, it might look really distended. It might look like it's full of fluid and kind of swishes back and forth. These are all signs that something's not right, and most likely something is causing your pet some discomfort. Now, if you look inside their mouth, which I recommend everyone does at least once a week, look in your pet's mouth. And if you see any tartar or calculus, any like buildup of gray or green or yellow chunky stuff on their teeth, most likely there's a little bit of discomfort in there. And you might say, well, my dog still eats fine. Yeah, that's because they're stoic about their pain. That's because they have to. If they don't eat, they're gonna die. So even if they're painful, they're still gonna eat. Now, can you imagine not brushing your teeth for your entire life? Likely, you're gonna be having some discomfort. You're gonna have some pain. Tooth pain sucks. Tooth pain really hurts. And I don't think that we appreciate that enough in animals. So if you notice any redness of their gums, any of that tartar, any bad breath, likely your dog has some irritation and pain and discomfort from their teeth. Now, next up, I want you to look at your dog's personality. Are they acting any different than they normally do? Because this is a big spot where people miss a lot of pain cues from their dog. Now, if your dog normally greets you at the door and is excited when you get home, but for the past couple days they just lay on the couch, that's abnormal. That probably means that something is bothering them. If your dog starts all of a sudden hiding and isn't coming out as often, is, quivering in a corner or just acting off, again, that's a sign that something isn't right. Now, this doesn't mean that it's a medical thing that's wrong. Sometimes, like humans, dogs have mental health as well. So sometimes, they may just not be as excited, and a quick, simple fix is they need more stimulation in their life. They're bored, they're anxious, they're depressed. So it's not always a medical fix, but it's often a red flag that something in their life or their body isn't quite right. So paying attention to those cues of, my dog isn't acting itself, my dog is now hiding, or my dog never goes into this room and all of a sudden my dog is in that room 24/7. Changes in behavior can also look like increased aggression. That can have so many different causes, but if you notice your sweet dog is now all of a sudden aggressive, oftentimes that can mean that they're in pain, they have neurologic issues, or a variety of other reasons that could cause this behavioral shift. At the end of the day, when you're trying to assess if your dog is in pain, one, always bring it to the vet. We're happy to see your dog, even if nothing is wrong, even if it's a clean bill of health, we're happy to still see your dog for you and help you work through that. But two, make sure you know they're normal so that it's really easy to tell they're abnormals, because dogs will tell you that they're in pain. And it's often not through barking, whining, or whimpering, but they'll tell you in their other subtle ways. So keeping a close eye on things that deviate from normal is gonna be your best indicator of something just isn't right. Let me know what other medical questions you have in the comments, and I can't wait to help you guys navigate your pet's pain, because it sucks not being able to talk to our dogs, but they really are talking to us in their own ways.